Go forward, we do this responsibly because all of these therapies are very exciting, but there's always risks involved in any type of treatment. So before we roll it out to the masses and say, okay, stem cells for sale, come on in, we want to make sure that it's safe and that we don't induce any unintended consequences, that no car accidents happen in the eye, no negative outcomes happen. So we want to make sure that we're responsible with this technology, and that's why we're very careful with how we discuss it and how we teach about it. So are there new medicines for AMD? We've talked a little bit about this. We talked about the gas tank, the depots, the longer-acting drugs. We touched upon stem cells. All of these are very interesting and novel technologies. I'm going to point to one of my friends in the audience who's wearing a device today to watch this lecture. And so outside of just drugs and medicines and implantable devices, there are wearable devices. And we see one in the audience today. And so we live in an era now where there are tools we can use, such as visors or microscopes or telescopes or magnifiers, and in some cases what we call virtual reality devices, wearables. This whole category is called wearables, and these are all basically tools that have expanded our ability to see and use what good vision we have left. So in some cases, some of these new medicines or therapies, we'll call them tools, involve us using our smartphone and wearing our smartphone so we can have a right up and close personal view of reading material, or in some cases clipping a video camera to our glasses. There's a nice device that does that, and as you hold the page up to your camera, it reads the page for you. So I'd love to have one of those personally because that's a nice time save, but it's designed for the visually impaired so that you can actually have something read to you and it's read accurately. And all of these types of devices are coming available or are available and do require fitting, right? So we do need to involve our vision rehabilitation specialists when it comes to these kinds of tools. But as I said earlier, it's an exciting time where you can just put on a device, although a little bulky for now, or wear a camera on your glasses and really enhance the experience of your vision. Clinical trials, Mary touched upon this earlier. There are a number of clinical trials happening. Last I checked, there was somewhere around 200 plus clinical trials happening in macular degeneration around the world. That includes Europe, Canada, Asia, the US, and getting into a clinical trial is an exciting opportunity. I would encourage you to inquire with your physicians about clinical trials. We always want to be responsible as physicians to make sure that you're enrolled in trials that are vetted by your physician as well as Health Canada or the FDA. I have had a few unfortunate situations where patients of mine have traveled to other countries to be involved in a trial that was not vetted by the appropriate healthcare authority, and they had some unintended consequences, some car accidents, as I mentioned earlier. So all of these things need to be approved, so approved studies, and there are many exciting things that are happening. And my message to you would be just be informed, continue reading, and make sure that if anything you're inquiring about or thinking about being enrolled in is an approved Health Canada or FDA study for the purposes of all of us who live in North America. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary, and we'll do a Q&A and discuss and answer any questions that you may have. I thank you for your attention. I hope this was informative. I encourage all of you to continue reading and asking questions to your wonderful retina specialists and healthcare providers that are taking care of you. Eat a heart healthy diet and continue to ask questions, and there are more answers coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Choudhry. That was incredibly enlightening. And I have lots of questions, but I really want to make sure that our guests and audience members here have a chance to ask their questions. So now the floor is yours. And I just ask that before you ask your question, just wait. We have my colleague Rachel will bring a microphone to you so other guests can hear. So who has a question? Or did just Dr. Choudhry answer everything? Oh, I see one right there. So Rachel's coming with the microphone.
Yes, you mentioned, just looking at my notes here, something about this new technology. You're going to be able to look at the eyes and then the architecture stuff, and then determine that you have this kind of disease or that kind of disease. And I'm just wondering, for example, you mentioned diabetes. What's the relationship between diabetes and certain kind or whatever kinds of eye diseases there are?
That's a great question. So, many of us, when we think of diabetes, we don't think about the eye. I mean, I do, but we don't commonly think about the eye. And diabetes, really what it is a disease at its root that damages blood vessels, okay? And so blood sugar that's in elevated form traveling through your body is traveling in blood vessels. And blood vessels, as we all know, are all over our body. They're in every organ. And the damage that happens to blood vessels is like losing the fiber optic coating off of a fiber optic cable. So most of us have seen cable, and it's encased in some sort of rubber or encasing. And if you strip that casing off, fiber optic cable leaks light, or a cable, television cable does not work as well. And so similarly with blood vessels, when they get stripped of their lining because of high sugar, they begin to leak. And what do they leak? Blood, fluid, cholesterol. All those things are leaking out of blood vessels. So does anybody know where are the smallest blood vessels in the body? The eye, exactly. So this is how diabetes affects the eye, because it damages blood vessels, and the smallest vessels are in the body. Where's the next smallest set of blood vessels? I heard it. Kidney and brain. So that's why we see kidney disease with people who have diabetes or advanced diabetes, as well as the risk of stroke and heart attack. So that is really the connection between diabetes and all these unfortunate complications, and it really boils back down to blood vessels and blood flow. That was a question in the back.
I have a question regarding the different groups of genes, as the blood have different groups, genes have different groups. So do you know about PROM1 genes, and to what degree that treatment could be possible for macular degeneration for PROM1 genes?
So the question is about the genetics of macular degeneration and a specific gene type called PROM1. So my knowledge with PROM1 is very limited, so I wouldn't be able to comment about an extensive amount of treatments dedicated towards PROM1 mutations and diseases that come from that. I will tell you, however, the genetics of macular degeneration and our knowledge in this area is expanding rapidly. We are looking at the various genes, including complement factor genes, genes like PROM1, looking at these genes to see what extent to which these genes are involved in different types of the dry macular or wet macular degeneration. So I think the answer to your question is to stay tuned, because more is coming up in the world of genetics and macular degeneration. We know more today than we did last year on the genetics of macular degeneration, and we'll know more tomorrow than we will know this year. So that's a great question that I, as a non-geneticist, couldn't answer for you today, but stay tuned. The answers are coming. There's a question up here on this table.
Hi. Thank you for having us all here. I appreciate it anyway. Sure we all do. I've had macular degeneration since 2007, and I lost vision in my right eye because of scar tissue from laser, and I get Eylea injected every month in my left eye, and it's kind of holding not too bad. The Dr. David Lane, he's pleased with how I'm doing. But you mentioned sudden blood flow that could give you sudden vision loss. Can that still happen if you're already having injections?
So that the question is, can sudden vision loss still happen if you're getting routine injections? And the answer, unfortunately, is yes. It is still possible for a blood vessel, an abnormal vessel, to rupture, causing sudden vision loss. The risk of that happening is much lower with treatment than without, of course, but you do want to continue to be on your guard, using your Amsler grid, checking your vision periodically to make sure that nothing has changed. Questions up in the back?
I have the wet macular degeneration in my left eye, and I've got scar tissue, and I was diagnosed 5 years ago. And so I'm wondering, my right eye is still very good, and I'm assuming that it's going to also affect my good eye. And I'm just wondering, is that a guarantee, or is there a chance that I'll be fortunate enough to just have it in one eye?
So the question is that what is the likelihood of getting macular degeneration, wet macular degeneration, in your good eye when you do have it in the other eye? And this is a very common question that all of us who see patients with this condition or have this condition want to know the answer to. The answer is, it really depends on your genetics. And that's, getting back to the whole question about genetics, everybody's different. And interestingly, we do have genetic testing available that can tell you the percent likelihood that your other eye may be affected. So if that's something that you wanted to explore, you could ask your doctor, and they can send you for genetic testing, where they swab the mouth and send it off to the lab, and they will give you a number. It'll say 90%, 5%, 1%. So you'll have a sense of some knowledge of likelihood of the other eye being affected. The range of likelihood ranges from a couple of percent to up to 50%. So to be more specific, genetic testing is something that could be considered to give you that type of information. But it's not a guarantee that your other eye will be affected.
Thank you. I'm seeing so many questions pop up, and I know that everybody is very eager to sort of share their personal disease journey as well, but I was hoping everybody could kind of think, and Dr. Choudhry is doing a wonderful job of kind of generalizing and helping to make the questions really make an impact for all of us in the room. So if you could sort of think about that when you're asking your question, that would be really helpful to everybody. Thank you.
Yes, at a previous Vision Quest conference, there was a research display by a doctor at the U of BC, and one of the things on this display was that the oral use of bisphosphonates for osteoporosis can double the risk of developing wet AMD. Do we know anything more about this?
So the question is about osteoporosis medicines in the class called bisphosphonates, and whether they were shown to potentially increase the risk of wet macular degeneration. So I think the best way to understand or to deliver the answer to your question is to recognize that we don't have any large clinical trials, randomized clinical trials in large numbers of patients to support that conclusion. So whether we've seen a few patients and they were put together, I don't know that specific research project that was done individually. Perhaps Mary could speak on that.
Yes, I will. I will echo what Dr. Choudhry said, that we haven't, there's different kinds of clinical research and different kinds of research that the Foundation Fighting Blindness is involved with and that clinicians are involved with. And this particular study, Dr. David Maberly is involved with at UBC, and it was a study that was looking at patients that had already received treatment. So it was looking at a large database of patients in the province of British Columbia. And because of looking at those big cohorts of patient data, they were able to see, if some patients are taking other drugs, how might those drugs be interacting with other drugs that they're taking? So it was a retrospective analysis looking at sort of correlations, in contrast to actually doing what Dr. Choudhry was describing as a randomized clinical trial, where you really set up a very specific experiment to answer a specific question. So it's a different kind of data, and they have actually, the poster, I'm so glad that that poster had an impact on you, and you bring it up now, and because they have actually published that study, and we can follow up and make sure that there's information on our website about it.
Great.
Would high blood pressure medication have anything to do with your macular degeneration?
So the question is about high blood pressure and whether high blood pressure has any medication has any connection to macular degeneration. So what we do know is that high blood pressure medication is helpful for high blood pressure, and it is better to have high blood pressure controlled if you have macular degeneration. So the answer to your question is high blood pressure medication is something that is a good thing to take if you have high blood pressure, so it prevents any additional complications that could happen within the eye or within macular degeneration. You're welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm just wondering, I'm a little ashamed to say this, but after all the lectures I've been to, I don't understand what macular is compared to the retina. And if this is a retinal disease, why is it called macular degeneration and not retinal degeneration? Where are the cobblestones?
Sure, that's a great question. So the question is, why is this condition called macular degeneration and not retinal degeneration, and what's the relationship of the macula to the retina? So, very straightforward question that should be answered, and I'm glad you asked that. So we're all sitting in a room, right? And the retina is like a room like this, a space like this, a tissue like this, and the center of that room is the macula. So the term macula is used to describe the central area within the retina, okay? So the macula belongs to the retina. It's within the retina, but it's just the central area, okay? Much like the bullseye on a dartboard. The bullseye belongs to the dartboard, but we call it a bullseye because that's the center of the dartboard. So we can think of it from that perspective geographically within the tissue of the retina. And so we call it macular degeneration because macular degeneration specifically affects the macula. And that's where the cobblestoning is, in the bullseye of the dartboard, in the center of the retina. The periphery of the dartboard, or the periphery of this room where we're all sitting on the far edges, is not affected in the same way. And so the disease name is specific to the location of the disease. So it's really been termed to describe the geography within the retina. It's a great question. So the drusen are largely located in the bullseye, in the macula, in the center, and that's the cobblestoning.
Previously, Dr. Robert Devannier delivered some information about a more digital interaction with the eye, and there was actually a patient of his who spoke about her process of revisioning. I think she had a very limited pixel representation. I wonder if there's any updates or information about the process of that research and the digital technology. I guess you would call it an implant.
Mm-hmm. So the question is about the digital implant that gives us digital vision. So what we're discussing here is a retinal microchip, which exists. It is a device that is surgically implanted onto the retina, onto the macula, the center of the retina, and it communicates electronically to a set of glasses that are worn, and this device is called the Argus implant. And the implant is put in surgically, and then the glasses are worn by the patient, and the Argus implant communicates what the patient is seeing with their glasses, and sends that message to the brain. And that vision that the patients see isn't like the vision that most of us, hopefully all of us, have today. It's a pixelated, digitized vision. And some of us refer to it as Argus vision, because it's a new way of the brain to learn to see. It's not seen in a pixelated format. So the update to your question is that device, the Argus implant, there's been 2 versions of it to date, Argus 1 and Argus 2. There's an Argus 3 being developed. And that device has originally been developed for very, very poor vision. So originally being implanted for people who can just see light, nothing more. If you can see a letter or you can see a hand moving, it really wasn't designed for you, because the amount of vision that you get back is still very nominal. And so it was first looked at and implanted for retinitis pigmentosa, and in the UK now has been studied for macular degeneration. And the subsequent versions of this technology are going to be expanding it to other conditions. I can't speak to Dr. Devennier's work, who's doing great work in the city in this capacity, but there are also other companies, another nice company that's working in Montreal with a Dr. Flavio Resende, and they're developing a similar Argus type of device to give us a newer version or a different version of this digitized vision. So, you know, when we talk about devices, and we talked about wearables earlier, wearable devices, the marriage between human beings and machines is here. We've already done it. And we're trying to build on the small gains and wins that we've had with devices like the Argus to give people their sight back. I mean, that's what we're all in the room for. It's why I'm standing here, and to make that into non-digitized vision, but to regular vision would be great. But it is baby steps, but they are good-sized steps that are happening.
Thank you, Doctor. My question isn't as involved as a lot of these other patients. I saw the doctor quite a while ago, and I've got dry macular. And to my surprise, he told me to stop eating carrots. And I never heard of that. So I'm just wondering, you know, what was he talking about?
Yeah, so the question is about whether we should be eating carrots in our diet. We've heard about this for years. I know I was told to eat carrots growing up, and that they're good for your eyes. And why would now we be told potentially different? So it's a little bit of a complicated answer, but carrots contain something called beta-carotene, and maybe that's why they're called carrots, I don't know. But beta-carotene is an antioxidant, and we talked about that has to do with aging. And it was found that when we've studied this in macular degeneration, that the beta-carotene portion can actually make some patients' macular degeneration worse, particularly those that are smoking. So it was dropped out of the formulations for vitamins, or has started to drop out of the formulations for vitamins. And so when we think about it in its utility or its usage for eye disease, it's no longer top of mind. It's no longer, if you eat, carrots, you're going to see better. You should eat carrots; they're still good for you. But I wouldn't use it as my sole vehicle to help my eyes see better, because there can be some negative consequences, particularly in smokers, for beta-carotene.
Doctor, my question is regarding the correlation between macular degeneration or eye diseases as a whole and stress. I was
A couple of stressed people back there, I can see they're clapping.
I was diagnosed with macular degeneration, dry, then wet, over 30 years ago, and I was still very much in the workforce. And what we noticed was that I would get episodes of vision loss and therefore bleeding at times of very high workplace stress. It would be almost immediate. And I wonder if this has been noticed anywhere else.
So the question is stress and its relation to the eyes and vision loss, and the correlation. So You know, it's a very challenging question. Stress, all of us have experienced stress, and it's a very powerful force, and we can become what we think about. And so that's really where stress fits. And stress, as we call it stress, can set into motion a lot of metabolic issues, a lot of release of certain types of hormones, and those hormones have an effect. They can make your heart rate race faster, you can make you sweat, they can make you feel as though your vision is getting blurry, they can set in a whole cascade of events. I can tell you that there is a division of the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, in the US, NIH, that is dedicated to just studying the effects of stress on humans. And while there may not be a specific great answer to your question about whenever you've experienced certain types of stress that you've had vision loss, this is a spectrum of the effects of stress. And I don't think we have a great answer for how stress directly affects what you described. There is a condition called central serous retinopathy, nice long name, but it is a retinal condition that is caused by stress or associated and connected to stress. And we've known that for years. So there wouldn't be an eye specialist that would dispute the effects or interaction or correlation of stress and the eye. How it pertains to different versions of its effect on your vision remains to be determined.
Now, I don't want to cause Dr. Choudhry's colleagues and patients any stress because I don't want him to be late for clinic. So there's one question that I really, really want to ask because I know that many of you will ask it afterwards. And if you have a question that Dr. Choudhry hasn't been able to answer, please write it down on your notes and get it to me, and we will make sure that we get an answer for you. And so, I mentioned this earlier, we're so enthusiastic about the research, the clinical research that Dr. Choudhry is working on right now. And for some of the people in the room or others who might watch this video later and they would like to be involved with some of the clinical work that you're doing, what is the best way for patients to do that?
So thanks for that question, Mary. So I think, without singling myself out as the researcher in the city, there are many great institutions doing great research. I think the best way to connect is to connect with your physician to find out what research is happening. With respect to my specific area of research, the Foundation Fighting Blindness is a great resource to connect to us. Our clinical website is www.vrmto.com, and there's an area in the website where you can send an inquiry and ask about, a trial or wanting to be involved in something. And that is probably the easiest, most straightforward way of connecting with our clinic. But ultimately, I think the onus is on all of us to ask our providers about what's happening in the area that we're concerned in, whether it's diabetes, glaucoma, cataract, or macular degeneration.
Thank you for that. And I think just to build on that, I mentioned earlier, everybody in the room can really make a difference with driving the development of new treatments. And it's always surprising to me when I know and I hear about these really exciting clinical trials where new treatments are being tested, that sometimes there are challenges getting enough patients enrolled. And then we hear these terrible stories, like the story that Dr. Choudhry shared with us about, some patients that have, metaphorical car crashes in their eye after going to seek out a clinical trial that has not undergone proper regulatory approval. And this is a problem that is all over the place, especially with the hype about stem cell treatments. There were lots of publications this year about, patients that had gone blind after being kind of duped into joining a clinical trial that was not safe. And so we really do encourage you, if you're interested to be involved with clinical trials, speak to your doctor and reach out to us because we're trying to keep track of what's safe, what's legitimate. The World Wide Web is a Wild West place, especially with respect to clinical trials. So you have to find that trusted information source.
I would like to echo all of that, what Mary just said. Just one quick comment, in Canada, the FFB has taken on a wonderful initiative of creating together a disease database. And I'd like to sort of put in a plug and support the idea that For those of us that have genetically based conditions like retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt's disease, others, even macular degeneration, as this database gets expanded, having our information or patient information about your disease state within the secure database for the FFB allows drug companies to ask the question, hey, do we want to do a trial in Canada? Do they have any Stargardts up there? FFB as an organization is able to be our advocate, all of us, to advocate for us and help bring in drug companies and innovation and device companies to Canada to say, hey, they have a lot of Stargardt's disease, let's do our trials here. So we're not sending our kids or our grandkids or ourselves all around the world chasing trials. We should be able to do them here. There are plenty of excellent facilities to do them, clinics, etc., but we need assistance and help to champion the recruitment process. But that also leans on all of us to work together to say, let's keep our data secure and pull it together and make sure we can use it as a chip to drive in the right type of innovative treatments.
Now, I can't thank Dr. Choudhry enough, so I'm going to ask all of you to help me in thanking him with a round of applause. And I promised his staff that he wouldn't be too late for his next clinic, so I'm going to let him make sure that he has some lunch that he can eat on his way back to the clinic. And with that, I'm going to welcome the president and CEO of the Foundation Fighting Blindness to the stage, Sharon Cole.
Thank you very much. It's really stunning to sit at the front of the room and look back and see just how many people are here. What a community that we've built. We have sponsors sitting here, pharmaceutical companies. We have members of our board of directors that are watching and seeing whether or not we're doing a great job, and we know we are. And we've got all of you. We've got the exhibitors and our collaborators from the other health charities, and we welcome them. And so this is, over the period, we are looking and searching for treatments. But the other thing we've done along the way is we're building a community. And many of you have told me sitting here today that this is the first time that you've been able to sit and chat with people in a really nice atmosphere and saying, what's up with you? And this is a tough thing. But we know that you're resilient, and we know that those treatments and cures are on the way. But Dr. Choudhry's on his way out. I'm going to wave him off, but I also want to tell him how very grateful we all are for you volunteering today to be with us. And without him explaining to us how there is a future there for you, it wouldn't be nearly as clear. So he's shown us our pathway, so I'm very grateful. And for all of you who are patients of Dr. Choudhry, how lucky you are. And the rest of us are only slightly envious. I also want to mention, Dr. Choudhry talked about the retinal implant, the Argus retinal implant. We're doing another talk October the 4th in the evening. And Dr. Robert Devenye is going to be presenting and bringing everyone up to date on what's happening with the Argus. So if you'd like more information about that, it's actually, you can register at the foundation. And I brought up the booklet that you got today, and right on the back, it shows our series. So if you look on the back, you see Dr. Choudhry, and then Dr. Devenye is right next to it. So that's October the 4th, and we still have some seats, but it's fast selling out. So please join us there. So Dr. Choudhry inspires all of us to work harder. This is the kind of research that the Foundation Fighting Blindness is raising money to support. And bringing sight-saving treatments to Canada is at the core of our mission. And that is, it's particularly appropriate that that's how the talk ended. We want the clinical trials to come to Canada. I can tell you right now, if you're looking on the web and you see a trial, and two things you can look for if to right away know that it is bogus. If they're asking for a lot of money, it's a scam. If it's in a faraway country, it's a scam. You're part of the best medical system in the world, in Ontario, in Canada, and North America. This is where the valid clinical trials will take place. And we want you to be part of that, and you have to get onto the patient registry to do that, because we will be forwarding information out to the clinicians and telling them where the patients are that they're going to be treating. So if you would like more information about the patient registry, please call our office. So the Foundation Fighting Blindness, can you hear me? It seems sort of a bit weird all of a sudden, but the Foundation Fighting Blindness, I guess they adjusted the volume. We've existed for 43 years, and over that period of time, we have given $32 million to Canadians working, Canadian vision researchers in hospitals across this country. We fund only the best research in Canada. The other thing that we've done is we have received another $10 million from the federal government. It doesn't come to us. We do not get any funding from government, zero. We raise all of our money ourselves, but they are partners in funding the research projects with us. And so together we've determined the best vision research projects in the world that are happening in Canada. We've contributed millions of dollars, and so has the federal government. And we're going to keep on doing that, because that is where we know that the answers will come. So people are always surprised that we don't receive that government funding. But there's things that we do. We raise all of the money by ourselves. And I can also say that we don't do it alone. We do it with your help, and we do it with the help of everyone in Canada. And so I was looking at your package today, and I was thinking, oh, this is so wonderful. Did everybody see that you got a thank you card from us? I think that's wonderful. Charis is here, and she wrote these. So I want you to know that we want to thank you. We want to thank you for a few different reasons. We want to thank you for being here today and being ambassadors and being courageous and coming down to downtown Toronto and in participating in this day. I can tell you that nobody has more power than you when you're talking to clinicians and government officials. So I want to thank you very much for that. We have a survey here, and I want you to fill out the survey. And you sort of say, why? But the reason that you're filling it out is because we want to do a better job the next time. We want to give you the information. Do you know that we're holding 12 of these speaker series across Canada this year? But we can only do it well if you tell us what you want. So please fill out the survey right now before you leave, and leave it on the table. And we would be really grateful. The other thing is, the second thing I'd like you to do is tell your friends and family all about today. Tell them what you've learned. Tell them about the condition that you have and what you want to do to make a difference in this world. And again, you don't realize that the impact that you will have on people by simply saying, I believe in the Foundation Fighting Blindness and the work they're doing. And finally, you can make a donation. Now, you all know that we raise our own donations. And so we can't do it without you. How many people here have ever made a donation to the Foundation Fighting Blindness? Oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you very, very much. And how many have become monthly donors? Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. I would like to ask everybody to go back into your package. And inside your package, you have a couple of really cool things. You've got the Amsler grid that Dr. Choudhry talked about, and you've got the donation form. Would anybody like to make a donation right now? If you do, put up your hand, and we'll get one of our staff to come and help you. But if you'd like to bring this home and just call it in, please do that too, or you can mail it in. Now with that, I'm always here to do the commercial, right? So, but all of our programs, our research programs, as well as our educational programs, are designed to help people with retinal degenerations. And we are powered by people who want a future without blindness. Now, we also are absolutely inspired by the tenacity and the resilience of the people in this room who have a retinal degeneration or macular degeneration. And so I want to thank you very much for coming, because what you do is inspire our sponsors who are here today, as well as the staff of the foundation and all of our volunteers who are here today to do just a better job all the time and to bring those treatments to you as soon as we can. Thank you very, very much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. That's it, Mayor.
Sorry, and who wants to come back for Vision Quest again next week? I'm just asking again. I wasn't really joking, because we have another event on October 4th, and maybe we'll have a chance to see some of you out again. Thank you again for coming. The event on October 4th is at the Peter Gilgan Center, which is affiliated with the Hospital for Sick Children. It's on, I believe it's on Bay Street. So 686 Bay Street. It's a beautiful new auditorium, the Peter Gilgan Center. It's an evening event, October 4th.